Hey guys, welcome back to another episode here on Hacks and Hobbies. Today I've got an amazing guest. We met at Podfest, we met at different events, and I've been following his journey on LinkedIn. And I was like, hey, we need to come and have a conversation on the podcast. He's been doing some amazing work. He's dedicated his career in supporting individuals through their most challenging times. He's an amazing human being, and I'm super excited to bring him on today. Furkan, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Junaid. Looking forward to the conversation. It's been quite the honor to meet you and connect with you and see some of the work you're doing. So this is amazing on my end as well.
Fantastic. So let's journey back in time. Share with us your origin story, like when you began, what was the essential thing that enabled you to say, hey, this is the direction that I want to go to it. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to spend my time in. So talk to me about that. What got you
Yeah,
inspired to be where you are today?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it unfolded in two phases. The first phase was when I became a father. So at the age of 30, became a father, and I was working in a corporate job, and I had some aspirations, and I wanted to become like an executive working in this space. And as I started to embrace fatherhood, I realized that maybe there's a disconnect here. And
Mm-hmm.
I saw some of these individuals that I wanted to be like and the relationships they had with their children. And it didn't really appeal to me the more I dove into it. And then I started questioning my own purpose in life. I started wondering, okay, so I become this executive. What does that mean for me, especially around my mortality? What do I want people to say? The second phase happened when I was going through a divorce. So 5 years later, at the age of 35, I was going through a divorce and I started seeking therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And in that therapy, a lot of stuff came to the surface. A lot from the cultural standpoint too, being of Pakistani origin, but at the same time, there's a lot of shame around the whole notion of divorce. So I started to navigate that, and I realized that I'm not the only man who potentially goes through this or goes through these struggles. So how can I be an advocate for other men? So I started to step into this space. And during the pandemic, I had the great opportunity of starting my master's in psychology to become a therapist. And I completed that late last year. So now I'm working in the space in different areas: anger management, addiction, entrepreneurship. So I'm getting to interact with a lot of individuals and still being able to support other men on their journey.
And that's quite a journey for sure. Those two phases, it. I mean, they're not only just you know, you can't just say, oh, this something happened, but it's something that changes your thought process, changes who we are. It like all the notions we have about things, right? All the notions we have about hey, how things are supposed to go. It like changes that. So I'm I'm really inspired to see, you took matters in your own hands and you're like, hey, I'm gonna go learn more about this. Let me go
Mm-hmm.
deeper into this. Let me go find assistance. What was like what were some of the things that said, hey, this is not the end? Because a lot of times people who are going through divorce, they feel defeated or they
Mm-hmm.
feel, I mean, I'm sure you can talk more on that, but there's a feeling of defeat, right? Hey, why couldn't this work? Right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's never the intention, but sometimes, it's not meant to be.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to look at it for myself. One was definitely my son. So
Mm,
I wanted to be able to carve a new path for myself and show him that, I made a tough choice, but this is the reason why. I
yeah.
wanted to become a better version of myself, but I couldn't just say that. I had to show it to him
Yeah.
by role modeling. So that was definitely a big motivator for me to not feel defeated because I truly believed in myself and the individual I could become. The other piece was I almost took it one day at a time because there were
Mm,
times where I did feel defeated and I felt like I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't know when the whole process was going to end, but just leaning into it one day at a time. There were some days where I really, really struggled. I'm not going to lie, but there's also other days where I felt like I was making forward progress. So it was just navigating it all at once and giving myself the space and having patience with myself to figure it out. Uh, I would remind myself at times that okay, this is not something I've ever gone through, so I
mm,
have to be. Uh, I can't beat myself up because this is something I'm figuring out as I go along. So when I'd have these long stretches of days where I didn't feel like I was making any progress, or sometimes I would be battling with depressive thoughts, I had to be really patient and take it one day at a time.
mm. That's really good to hear from somebody. I mean, someone going through this, right? Because you want to slow down, take one day at a time. Like, hey, how
Mm-hmm.
did this happen? How can we build a better future? So I love
Yeah.
that concept. I love that you focused on that. Let's go deeper into some of the life and stress, like corporate life and stress management, because there's a huge
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it. I know a ton of people. I used to be in corporate. My wife's in corporate. There's lot of people that I know that we both know that are in corporate, and there's a lot of stress that comes into it, like so much that it overtakes your personal life as well, right? And you spent nearly 20 years in that corporate world. And how did
Mm-hmm.
your experience shape your understanding of stress and its impact on professionals? Because not only is it did it help you elevate, but like uh, how did that experience shape your understanding?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I realized is we often tend to identify with our careers. So it becomes a part of our identity. And that's where we tend to then accumulate a lot of that stress because work doesn't end when we leave the office or work doesn't end when we turn the laptop off.
Yeah.
It's with us. We're thinking about it. I can't believe how many times I hear people saying, oh, this is what keeps me up at night. And they'll
Mm-hmm.
refer to something about work.
Yeah.
That alone is to me mind boggling that we let work stuff keep us up at night, right? There should be absolutely nothing that should keep us up at night. So now, as you can appreciate, if it's starting to affect your sleep,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to cause a lot of stress as also. A lot of the things I've come to learn through the anger management space is people often have breakdowns or they experience burnout, not because they have one isolated event, it's an accumulation of events. So that
Yeah.
stress is accumulating. If we're not sleeping properly, then we're not probably eating properly. A lot of these executives that I was seeing, they didn't really focus on what they were putting in their body, right? So they,
Mm-hmm.
on the surface, look healthy. They're working out, they exercise, but lunch is just like a hindrance. So they would work through lunch, eat whatever they could. So again, that's another aspect. So being in it and seeing it firsthand, I can appreciate why there's so much stress. For me, it also, when I decided to pivot, I realized that my purpose in life is greater than this
Yeah.
because whatever this career is, it's going to end at 60. And then I have further a life to live there. So how do I want to create that now? So I'm not trying to figure it out at 60. And I see a lot of people that retire, they do tend to struggle with figuring out what's next. So there's a lot in there that I
Yeah.
had to navigate myself and appreciate.
I love what you said. You hear people, uh, and the things that they talk about are things related to their daily work life, right? That's their main focus. And not
Yeah.
only do they also think about it after hours, right? You're talking about it after hours, but you're also not getting enough sleep, and it's affecting their health, it's affecting their diet. And I see that so much in
Hmm.
a lot of people around me. They're constantly on the clock, even though they're supposed to be working 9 to 5, but they're actually working
Hmm.
24 hours for that one
Hmm.
company and getting paid very little for it. And I think that's where you probably decided to do the transition to therapy, right? So you said, okay, you know what? Corporate is great, but I want to focus on helping other people get more out of life, have kind of like have that work life balance. And
Hmm.
since I've done a similar transition from doing that work, focusing on, hey, I need to get this thing done. Now all my thoughts are, okay, I got to do all these things for my own podcast, for my own business, for my own thing. And so those things stay with me. And
Hmm.
you got to bring the right kind of focus. So it's been really inspiring to see that for myself. But talk to me about what inspired you to transition from that successful corporate career that a lot of people also have to becoming a therapist and focusing on the health of others.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that was missing was I didn't feel like in the corporate job, even though I was working with people, I didn't feel like I was impacting people,
Hmm.
right? So a lot of the work I was doing was, yeah, it was great. I was proud of it and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't feel like I was making an impact in directly in the lives of people.
Yeah.
And I wanted, and like I said earlier, for me, it was like, what do I want people to say? Like, what would some of the thoughts be on my deathbed, right? I know that sounds a bit morbid, but essentially, we all
It's
know
the
for
truth.
a
Yeah.
fact that yeah, that day will come. So what kind of ideas and what kind of things would I want to think about? And one of the biggest things that came to the forefront for me was I don't want to be on my deathbed and think about, oh, all this great projects I did and this great career I had, because ultimately it means nothing.
Yeah.
I wanted to shift that and, hopefully for people to say or talk about the impact I had in their lives through how I behaved or showed up in this world, and also by the work I did for them. So that was kind of really the shift. And like I said, when I was going for therapy during my separation process, I saw the two connect together, that I
Hmm.
could be an advocate for men's mental health and support other men. Now, that my work isn't only limited to men, but
Sure.
that's where the two connected for me.
That's a really powerful topic, men's mental health, and it's almost like taboo to even talk about it. I'm like, what? Men don't have mental health? What are you talking about? They're supposed to be strong and they're supposed to take on all the challenges. But it's true. I mean, we are human beings. We have a mind, and it affects the rest of our bodies, no matter how much focus we're in. And I think that's also comes from the fact of a lot of the people that have grown up in, let's say, your time and my time, we were
Mm-hmm.
raised by our mothers, right? So we have a lot of that feelings, we have a lot of those thought process that our moms taught us, because our dads were like, hey, no, you got to do this, and they're focused on work, and they're just spending. So I think a lot of that comes into a different kind of fold. Talk to me a little bit about that. How does that um, help, or how does that affect, or and how can we like go past that?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot, as you talked about generationally, men or boys got socialized where talking about feelings or emotions was frowned upon. There was this perception that men are supposed to be stoic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's that misconception around stoicism too. But at the end of the day, I think as men, in general, we all have emotions. We all experience emotions. They're there for a reason, they serve a purpose. So blocking them and not letting them come through is
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of these issues arise. And you see people struggle with that. And with anything, if you try to suppress it, it's going to come out in different ways. So I've alluded to the anger piece a few times. So
Mm-hmm.
because men are not taught early on in life to express their emotions in a healthy way,
Yeah.
it then comes out as anger as they get older. Because at the end of the day, the biggest piece is we all, on a human level, want to be
Yeah.
seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be understood. And when we don't feel that's happening, and a majority of the time it's because of our inability to express ourselves, that's when we often will get upset and express it as anger. Now, that conditioning is really where that problem begins. And I think we're starting to, through these conversations, make a change and have more of these conversations around how can we help boys and men express themselves differently and be open to it and being vulnerable, because that's the biggest piece. A lot of times we've equated vulnerability
Yeah.
to being weak or not manly enough, and that narrative needs to change, obviously.
It absolutely does. And as a parent of four kids, three of them are boys, right? My oldest is 14, and I've already seen that anger coming. Like he's yelling back at me. I'm like, dude, what's going on?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how can we get past that? And how can, like, what are the education and the aspects that I can do for my sons to say, hey, yes, we do get angry, but that's not the
Mm-hmm.
way to respond. That's not the way to do. Like what are some of the things that we should be looking at, and you know, getting a better understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think teaching them coping mechanisms. So a lot of the times, what I'm working with in terms of the men I work with is teaching them healthy ways of communication.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than letting the issue get to the point where you burst and there's anger there, how can you address it more proactively and express yourself in real time? Now, as boys at that age, they're obviously going through a lot. There's puberty, and so there's a lot of hormonal changes happening too.
Yeah.
They also don't know what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you can teach them other practical skills. Like a lot of the times, people will journal. So they'll write it down. Um, Sometimes it's an exploration. There's times where
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling irritated or triggered too, and I need to really sit down with my journal and explore, okay, what's going on? Has this been a pattern I'm noticing about myself over the last few days? What's changed? Maybe it's my lack of sleep. Maybe I'm not eating properly. Maybe I'm not
Mm-hmm.
getting enough exercise. So you have to get really curious with yourself. So we can teach those skills early on so then they can learn and they can actually look inward and figure out what's going on so then they can then express that or even ask for help. That's another thing, is how do we role model that vulnerability? So as
Mm-hmm.
fathers, it's our responsibility to demonstrate it through our behavior and the
Yeah.
choices we're making. So by being open and vulnerable about things we're experiencing or things we're going through, or even just apologizing when we fall short, that shows our children that it's okay to be vulnerable and I can do the same. And then the third piece is a lot of the times I'm working through mindfulness practices. Now, mindfulness has become a big uh, trendy term, but there's
Yeah.
aspects to it, right? You can meditate, you can do breathing exercises, but the idea really is to sit with yourself and be present.
Mm-hmm.
And I find children today really struggle with that because they're so connected digitally. They have devices, they have video games, whatever it is. They, like, the amount of times I hear my son say, I'm bored, it blows my mind because I didn't have that luxury of saying I'm
No,
bored.
we
I had to
didn't have it.
make up games, yeah, and figure out how to entertain myself. So if you're bored, sit down and figure out why you're bored. Just be present with yourself,
Yeah.
see what's going on. And for children, that's a very tough skill to learn, but those are things we can help them practice and learn. And then also apply it to ourselves.
Amen, man. That's so good. I love the few things that you mentioned. Right, mindfulness is great, but then also being vulnerable ourselves and sharing. Hey, I'm sorry that I did this, and this is what I've been
Mm-hmm.
feeling. It's been so stressful. Blah blah blah. But the mindfulness is really a trigger point for me, because not just trigger point, but it reminded me of the khutbah that I recently attended last
Mm-hmm.
Friday, and the imam was like, people talk about mindfulness all day long, but as Muslims, we're literally practicing it 5 times a day,
Yeah.
right? We're
Yes.
mindful of our position, and we're performing these prayers. It's because it connects us deeper, and then we're doing some of the
Hmm.
things that somatic healing talks about, where we're touching the ground with our head, releasing all that energy. Like, there's so many benefits of that. I love that you share that as well. So there's something that in your bio that I read, talking
Hmm.
about, um, so you resonate strongly with the bio psychosocial and spiritual model at HUM, or
Hmm.
so biopsychosocial. I think that's a lot of there's a lot of words, but it the thing that you mentioned about, when you're angry, you might be hungry, you not might not be eating properly. Could you
Hmm.
explain like what this model entails and how it has influenced your healing journey?
Yeah, I think ultimately this, you touched on the biopsychosocial, but the spiritual piece too that you touched on, and the four are equally fundamental. And I would put a lot of weight on spiritual. So I'll talk about the first three first. So just, yeah, your biological stuff, like again, understanding what has biology allowed us to do, whether it's our sleep, whether we're eating properly. So focusing on those things. So I've already touched on that.
Mm-hmm.
The psychosocial piece, so psychology again, understanding what your triggers are, what's going on, um, being aware of some of your past trauma. And I think people tend to take trauma now, and again, that's become a big trendy term as well, but
Yeah.
really paying attention to what are some of the experiences you've had in life that you haven't really healed from and that have really stuck with you. We all tend to have those, right, that have
Yeah.
really impacted us, and they've affected how we show up in this world, how we behave, how we respond to triggers. So paying attention to that. And then the social piece really is our relationships, family, friends. They all have an influence on our ability to show up and how we're impacted.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty comprehensive model. But the one piece that you touched on in terms of even Friday prayers, but the spiritual piece, what's your connection with your higher power?
Yeah.
And I would even argue beyond the 5 times a day for Muslims, we're almost asked to connect with God any time of the day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's that mindfulness piece, and being
Yeah.
present is to connect not only with yourself, but your higher power. And if you're struggling, or if you're going through something difficult, or you're trying to figure something out, you can always ask for that guidance. And that's, to me, is that connection to your higher power. Unfortunately, in the world we live in today, we're
Mm-hmm.
so consumed by all the stimulation around us that we seldom find the time to
Yeah.
have that connection inward and up. And that's where I think a lot of issues arise, because we're unable to do that.
Man, that's so powerful, and you're absolutely right. Where we are invited to make, before morning prayers, or at the end of the night, or at night after prayers, like when everybody's sleeping, because again, you could focus more and be more present with God, and those things.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for bringing that up, because it is very important for us to connect, and there is no higher power that can help us get closer to our goals that we're looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's really inspiring of your journey and your story is that you've also been facilitating men's groups since the pandemic. I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to hear some of the powerful changes you've witnessed in these groups.
Yeah, I think, just for context, one of the biggest things that allowed me to navigate the pandemic as I was going through my own stuff and separation, divorce, and relationship issues was the ability to connect with other men.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started on my journey, I had also started a podcast, so I was connecting with a lot of men across the world, and I started attending some men's groups that were remote, and I immediately saw the power behind them. So I met a friend well, he's a good friend now, but I
Mm-hmm.
met him during the pandemic, and we connected immediately, and we both talked about starting a men's group here locally, where we're based in Calgary, Alberta. And yeah, we kicked it off in the tail end of the pandemic. And it's interesting because you asked me the powerful shifts, but I I had the mindset going into starting this men's group that, oh, this is my way of giving back. This is my way of sharing
Yeah.
some of the skills I've learned with the community of men. And I felt like this was me giving back, but I've taken so much more back from it by just being
Yeah.
around these men and being having the opportunity to talk about some of the difficult things that we're all going through. So that's definitely been a big shift that I, at times when I was struggling or I was working through something very difficult in life or something challenging, I felt like I had a group of men that I can call my brothers and just share without fear of any judgment, because we
Yeah.
were all doing that, because we were all being vulnerable. And I think what it's allowed us to do in terms of the shift part is it's all allowed us to actually improve as men. We've become better men in society, better fathers, better partners. And the biggest piece is because we're learning from each other.
Yeah.
We're sharing our experiences. We're challenging each other. We're pointing out each other's blind spots. And I think that's something that's really missing in the world today. And I've really benefited from being a part of this men's group, or any men's group I've been able to
Yeah.
attend or participate in.
I love that, Furkan, because I too went from through a similar process to get better in front of the camera or get better at telling my own story. It was during those pandemic days where we were spending 1 hour every single day with other entrepreneurs, with other heart centered leaders, in opening up ourselves for these corrections, for the
Mm-hmm.
flaws that we have, so that we can, you know, rise up above and be better as human beings. And the thing that you mentioned about, being in groups, and if you think about it, human beings we are social animals, right? We're not meant
Yeah.
to live alone on our own on an island, because that's not good for anybody. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really important to find your group, find your community, and which is going to help you grow so much more than you can imagine. And you're absolutely right. We have so much to give, but then we also have the capacity to receive. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're able to receive is when you can also give back to the society. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, sharing the amazing lessons that you learned along the way. This has been really really good for me. This has been really inspirational for me as well. Let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll go into the three implementable hacks for our audiences, that they can be better prepared
Mm-hmm.
for in their lives. So now just take a little break. Hey guys, welcome back. We've been talking with Furkan on the podcast, and what's really cool is that Furkan has not only so many years of experience, 20 years of experience um, in the fun stuff of, I don't know, fun's the word. I don't know if fun's the word. What do you think, Furkan? Is it
Well,
fun
I
when
think
you're?
it's all perspective. It
Yeah,
is fun.
yeah,
I mean, I have no regrets. I think I've learned so much through those experiences.
yeah,
All, at the end of the day, and this could be one of the hacks if we jump right
yeah.
into it,
Let's jump right into the
is
three hacks.
all right. So, with respect to that question around fun, I think one of the biggest things I would tell people is do not judge any of the things you go through in life, because I've learned through not only through reading ancient texts and through the lives of other men that
Mm-hmm.
I look up to, and then personal experience, that every opportunity, every experience in life is a teacher if we take it that way. And I've had some very, at the time, I looked at negative experiences and I've had positive experiences, but all of them have taught me something in life. The negative experiences have been my biggest teachers because they've allowed me to improve. They've allowed me to become a better person, and they've allowed me to build certain forms of resilience and skills that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
So that would be the first hack, that do not judge any of your experiences in life.
I love that. All right, so let's go to the next hack. What's that going to
Yeah.
be?
That would be consistency. Consistency
Mm,
is key. For me, I am a person that I don't get things the first try. I just don't have that skill or talent. I don't um, end up achieving success by my metrics immediately. For me, it takes time and effort and consistent effort. And a lot of people, you know, let's just use podcast as an example. People will start podcasts, right? The
mm-hmm,
stats don't lie. Majority of the people do not make it past the first 20 episodes.
mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because they don't either see the results, they don't see the the immediate impact that they want to make, or they just give up because it's too much work. So why does that happen? So first of all, what I've learned, like for my podcast, I've released over 200 episodes now.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the idea of work, I've been able to do it for so long that I've mastered this streamlined process that works for me. So it doesn't feel like I'm putting in that many hours now, because I
Yeah.
can go in, quickly put an episode together. It still requires time,
Mm-hmm.
but I've streamlined the process through consistent effort. The impact, even after 200 episodes, you can argue, okay, well, what's the impact? That's subjective. But I have an audience. It's not big, but it's an audience that is there supporting me from since day one. Some people have been there since day one, and there's some people who have come on along the way. But it's through that consistent effort that I've been able to put out. Now that what I considered, we were talking about during the
Mm-hmm.
break, if you look at your growth from day one till now, you see such a exponential growth,
Yeah.
right? So that's what I've seen, is now the quality is completely different than my first episode, but that wouldn't have happened through consistent effort.
Amen, man. Thank you so much for sharing. So be okay to reflect and learn from each of the elements, each of the situation that you have, right? So look at what is going to help you. Number two, being consistent. Oh, what about number three?
Number three, I think, is, for me, that's really worked, is be disciplined with yourself. I think uh, I think it was Marcus Aurelius that's really stuck with me. I'll paraphrase what he said, is be tough with yourself but lenient with others.
Hmm.
So I am constantly holding myself accountable, because if I don't hold myself accountable, then nothing's going to work. So when I say discipline, for me, I know a standard procedure that works. That means waking up at a certain time,
Yeah.
making sure I get my exercise in, making sure I'm doing my prayers, making sure I'm doing my readings. Those are all non negotiables for me on any given day. Even if I don't feel like doing it, I'll
Mm-hmm.
still push myself, because I know after I push myself, I'm so grateful that I did.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I went ahead with it. So you have to be disciplined in any area of your life. If you're trying to do something, whether it's improve or whether you're trying to achieve something or build something, you need to have that discipline. Otherwise, you can't inspire others around you
Yeah.
if you're not inspired yourself. And that would be my third, I guess, advice or piece of advice or recommendation when it comes to hacks, is the discipline piece is the most crucial.
I love that, man. Thank you so much. This has been really really helpful and really mind opening for me as well. Having these conversations, just like you mentioned, being consistent, having the conversation in those groups helps you grow. And I've experienced the same uh, through through our conversation. All right,
Mhm.
let's before we close in, let's jump into the fun six questions that I love to ask. Number one, what is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
One hobby I wish I got into. I'd say skiing. I never
Hmm,
really got into that. It's a big sport here in Canada.
nice. I love it. I have not skied, but I used to snowboard a while, but it's been a while since I did that too.
Yeah.
Next up, what did you want to be when you were a child?
An actor.
An actor. Hmm, what would you act in?
I don't know.
There.
I was
Mhm.
would have been anything really. I just
Yeah.
wanted to be in front of a camera and act, and my parents were like, "Nope, you're gonna go to university."
You know, you're at a time that you could probably step in and do some acting right now. And this is something that I got inspired to do as well in 2019. I joined this app called Backstage.com, and since then I've appeared in five different like films, or not just film, like commercials and like
Yeah.
short videos, and that's been a lot of fun. In fact,
Hmm.
I'm going to be traveling in next month for a photo shoot for a big brand. So I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. So it's been a lot of fun experiencing it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And on that topic, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
I mean, that's changed over time
Mm-hmm.
in terms of movies, but TV show, I would definitely put at Seinfeld. Just the comedy is real
Oh my
life
god,
comedy.
it is. I love that show as well. I've actually seen it multiple times, and the last time that I saw, I was like, oh my god, these people are really bad people. Like, it's really interesting to see how they acted around other people and how they ridicule other people. It was really interesting. All right, next up, if you were to play a character in any movie, what would it be?
Um, Actually, I've been curious to play the can't remember the name of the character in Lion King.
Hmm.
Um, the monkey. What was his name?
No, not Mufasa. Uh, that's a really good
Yeah,
question.
the
He's the
name
one
just
who he's
slipped
basically
my mind.
the
He's the wise
the
monkey
wise
there.
monkey,
Yeah,
right? It's like the oracle.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
I love
Was
that.
it Rafiki? I think it was
Rafiki,
Rafiki.
that's right. That's his
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Awesome,
It'd
awesome,
be
awesome.
Rafiki. Yeah.
All right, next up, where does he go? Who's your favorite superhero?
Um, I'd say Spider-Man, but
Hmm.
like Marvel kind of changed the whole Spider-Man character, so that's shifted for me a bit. But
Yeah.
I've always, as a kid, enjoyed watching Spider-Man, just his agility and
Oh
and
man,
then
that's right.
that whole quote around with great power comes great responsibility. So
Yeah, I love that quote so much because it's so true, right? We as we grow older, we have more power, and which means that
mhm,
we also have more responsibility in how we behave and how we treat others. So it's so
yeah.
important and so poignant at this time of life, because if you think about it, all of us have a lot more power than we had before through social
Mhm.
media. So use it
Yes.
responsibly because it can come back and bite you in the butt. All right, next and last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Board chess, be
Hmm.
chess, just because of the complexity
No, I like it.
of it
I
all.
like it.
I think we're all complex humans. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Your insights have, are incredibly valuable. I love the fact of, being the biopsychosocial and the spiritual elements that we all have. We need to really pay attention to that. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I think that was great. I really enjoyed being here, and thank you so much, Junaid, for giving me the opportunity to come on and talk with you. So very much appreciate all of it.
Absolutely, Furkan. All right, next up, or lastly, how can our audience connect with you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, I think the I'm most active in terms of social media on Instagram. My handle is Unoya Zen, so that's spelled EUNOYAZEN.
Okay,
Or you can check out my podcast, which is available everywhere. It's called Easy Conversations, so that's EZ Conversations.
perfect. I'll be sure to include all the links and social media to the show notes. Thank you so much again, and we'll catch you in the next episode. All right. Hey guys, thank you so much for sticking around. We've had an amazing conversation, Furkan. Again, check the show notes to connect with Furkan, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.